Okay, I'd like to invite our panelists to join me on the stage. So, good day, everyone, here and online, and welcome to the Ocean Pavilion. I'm Barrett, Senior Advisor for Climate at the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and I am honored to serve as your moderator for today's exciting session organized by AGU entitled Full Steam Ahead, Women's Leadership in Ocean Science. I want to begin with a callback to a trailblazer who may not be sufficiently known to all of us. She is Maria Mitchell, the first female professional employed by the U.S. Coast Survey. According to the U.S. National Women's History Museum, Mitchell probably was the first woman employed in a professional capacity by the federal government. Although women had been hired as cooks and laundresses, her 1845 employment appears to be the first case of a woman earning an annual salary for work based on knowledge in an academic field. Then Coast Survey Superintendent Buck hired Maria and her father to assist in astronomical observations associated with a project to establish a cardinal point for latitude and longitude for the US and North America. Records indicate that Bach paid her $300 a year. 2 years after she started with the Coast Survey, in October of 1847, Maria used a telescope to discover a comet, becoming one of the first women to do so. Her discovery brought her fame and helped to establish her as one of the foremost 19th century women scientists in the United States. But her fame caused a debate within the United States Coast Survey. Her own father expressed fear that some of the less enlightened members of Congress might look poorly on the Coast Survey for employing a woman. Fortunately, the superintendent was not swayed by such concerns, and he in fact sent her a congratulatory note to the indefatigable comet seeker on her success, saying, "The Coast Survey is proud of its connection to her." Well, as the saying goes, we've come a long way, baby. I know we are all happy to be beyond the days when there was a significant gender pay gap or any questions in society as to the value of women as part of the scientific workforce. All kidding aside, the ladies are now full partners, leading authorities and important innovators and influencers in all aspects of Earth and space sciences. We see this so strongly in the ocean sciences, where women are helping to illuminate the important role the ocean plays in mitigating climate change, and also helping us to understand the impacts from rising seas, ocean waters that are warmer and more acidic, increasing coastal inundation and erosion, declining ecosystem health, fish moving to cooler waters at the poles, and so much more. Today, we are incredibly fortunate to be joined by extraordinary women, ocean scientists that are living proof of the value of learning from the work of capable innovators from all genders and disciplines to solve the complex problem of climate change. Women who, many years later, are following in the footsteps of Maria Mitchell and demonstrating the importance of breaking barriers and setting models for girls and women to follow. Please join me as we now welcome our esteemed panel. We have with us today Fátima Abrantes, Senior Researcher from the Portuguese Institute of Sea and Atmosphere, Iulia Streanga, a PhD student in the MIT WHOI Joint Program, Karina von Schuckman, who I think will be joining us if she can get through the security line, who is an oceanographer at the Mercator Ocean International, Tali Vardy, Executive Director from the Coral Restoration Consortium, and Kara Wiggin, PhD candidate from Scripps. I'm going to join you now, sitting in the... Where is a mic? Are you the mic? All right. So the way we're going to structure this is I have a couple of questions for the panel, but I'd also like to invite, after I've gone through a little bit, questions from the audience. So be thinking ahead of time. So I'd like to just pose a question to each of you from your varied perspectives. How do you think the push for greater access and opportunities for women in your fields has resulted in more robust discovery and solution science in general, and thereby more action on climate? Maybe Fátima, we'll start with you.
Well, thank you. It's very good to be here today. I thank the organization for giving me this opportunity to defend the role of women in ocean science. I've started many years ago, as my white hair kind of shows. I'm sorry. I totally agree with what you said. We have been through a lot of challenges and trying to change those challenges into opportunities to be able to thrive and survive. I started in Angola, in Africa. And it was really interesting after all these years thinking about it, to realize that there were no gender problems there at the faculty. Then I moved to Lisbon, and there it was totally different. We had a totally male-dominated department, geology department, I should say. I'm a geologist by training. And after finishing in geology in Portugal, I decided to come to the United States and get a degree in oceanography because I was very interested in understanding the role of the ocean in the evolution of Earth and life on Earth. And to come to the United States, I needed funds. And to get those funds took me 5 years. But I finally was pleased to get a fellowship from NATO and moved to the US, and was very surprised when I got to URI and realized that the grad school of oceanography and geological oceanography was all, again, men, except for Margaret Leinen, who was our role model at the time. And more than that, I then learned that my advisor, I was going to be the first PhD student in '85, because he thought that educating women for PhD level was a waste of time and money. So that was one thing I had to prove, that I was capable. Then I wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for me. And my last year of grad school, I got pregnant. You can imagine his reaction. So to me, proving that women could be simultaneously mothers and researchers was a lot more valuable than degree itself. When I got done, I went back to Portugal, and I was the first paleoceanographer back in Portugal. And the second woman being a researcher at the Geological Survey in Portugal as well, of course. So to move from a place where I had a lot of communication, exchange, knowledge, collaborations, to a condition where I was the only one, made me immediately feel the need to get a group together. But for that, I needed to prove the value of paleoceanography to the institution, to the funders, and at the same time, as part of that effort, I had to start being active in scientific panels on many European and international programs. So again, it wasn't an easy path, but it was worth it. I did contribute for the education of many younger researchers in Portugal, and I do have a group of paleoceanography today working very hard and having being recognized worldwide. So yes, we did get far away from what we were 20 years ago or 30 years ago, but we're not there yet. And there I disagree, especially because we have very different conditions depending on where you are in the world. So the path is not finished. The struggle is still on. And the push is still needed very much in some countries. However, I do believe that women are in the best position to do science and get the ocean science going where we need it to go. Because we are by nature the mothers of humanity. And by culture, we are responsible for guaranteeing the well-being of our families and communities. As such, women have always needed to be pragmatic to get the most out of the very little. And these natural and historic conditions have turned women into fighters for survival and made them persistent, creative, attentive to detail, emotionally intelligent, and ready to promote collaboration and teamwork. I believe that besides the famous sixth sense that women have, the capability of fighting setbacks and facing challenges with passion and new solutions, while we provide the necessary glue that unites people around a major objective and leads to success, even if with fewer conditions than others, is really what makes us be important and ready to solve the complex problems of soul science at the same time as our attention to detail, our creativity allows us to do the robust science that is necessary. And the role of the many women that are now in science, I think, is not only empowering other women, but also inspire students of all genders. I do believe that only all together we will be able to identify the policy-relevant research questions and carry out the holistic and transdisciplinary approach that is needed to discover how the ocean can help us mitigate and adapt to the impact of climate change. And I hope I have given you what you want.
Thank you. Tali, let's go to you. What are your views about the push for greater access and opportunities for women in your field?
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for letting me be on this panel. It's a great honor. I'll just start with, I don't really believe in the gender binary, but I do believe that women, and especially mothers, do face specific and unique challenges, and I'm honored to speak on that today. My field is marine conservation biology, and it's actually a field where most of the people in this field are women. There's really a lot more women than men in this field, but it still somehow appears to be dominated by men often. And that's been sort of a challenge, I think, for a lot of us. But I agree wholeheartedly with Fátima, and you stole a lot of the words that I was going to say out of my mouth, because I think women by nature are thorough, thoughtful, and practical. And I think that really lends the type of research that they do to solving some of the huge challenges. So marine conservation biology isn't about stopping climate or really getting to even understand climate change more specifically, but it's about dealing with the effects of climate change. And I'll just give one example from my organization, the Coral Restoration Consortium. We have these working groups that tackle specific problems like larval propagation for corals, or cryopreservation for corals, or genetic management for populations that are declining. All three of those examples are led by women, and the genetics group in particular is led by a woman named Iulia Bombs, who, without any specific funding for this question, realized that all these people who are trying to restore corals in their neighborhoods throughout the tropics are coming to her. She's the preeminent geneticist on coral biology, and asking her, how do I do it so that my population actually succeeds in the long run and I'm not planting a monoculture? And, she'd kind of like arm wave and be like, well, you got to try and go to different places. And finally, we have these working groups, and she said, let's get together and bring about an actual solution. And they came out with real numbers. They captured 90% of the genetic variability by getting 3 to 5 different genetic individuals or even phenotypic individuals for places that don't have access to genetic resources. And planting them in clusters of 4 to 6 on the reef. So she was able to really give some concrete advice, and that's one of the reasons that I love working with women. I feel like they're very practically oriented and interested in solving the issues of today.
Thank you, Tali. Let's go to our PhD students now, starting with you, Carrie.
Hi, thanks again for having us. I do also feel very honored to be on this panel. So I just wanted to start by saying that, I've been very privileged to be educated by a lot of women in marine biology, as well as a very women-heavy field, especially in the U.S. And, that sort of brings me to sort of what you guys are saying is very similar to the practicality approach and the thoughtfulness is that I've always found women to be more drawn to solution-based sort of empathy-focused fields in science, and that we're always drawn to conservation. I myself am mostly a toxicologist, which is a field very dominated by women because we tend to see, chemical pollution, plastic pollution around us, and then be inspired to go that route with our research. I'm a big advocate for curiosity-driven science, but when we're talking about climate change, we have to have very solution-based driven science at this moment. And I find women are really excellent at solution-based science, and we're really drawn to it more than other fields. And it tends to be more than men. Obviously, there's many men that are interested in it too, but it tends to be a very woman-heavy conversation and field that we're drawn to. So, and that's something that I found by all of the women I have been educated by, is that they're very drawn to these fields by their personal passions and want to create these solutions to make a better world for either their future children or for the people that they care about. So that's something, that draws on that I've really noticed about women, and I think is such an advantage to women in science. And then I was trying to find some numbers. I did some homework prior to this panel, as I always do. And, I found this great paper that was really trying to outline some of the, sort of definitive advantages of women in these fields. And what they found was that when teams are gender balanced, that they produce more innovative and impactful research. Teams with women achieve greater equality and participation throughout all of the people on the team, which is something I have also found as well. Women are really open to sharing the table. And that they more often than men recognize the expertise of their fellow scientists and, take the time to learn what everyone is good at and really include that. And I thought these 3 facts were just so true to all of the women that I have worked with, and something that I hope to advocate for all women to continue to be like this in their fields, because this is really how you approach solution-driven science, is getting every expert at the table, recognizing all of their expertise, giving everyone equal participation to make sure that we're doing the most innovative and impactful research as possible. And, something I just really wanted to mention as a toxicologist, can't leave the stage without mentioning Rachel Carson, who really was a pioneer of toxicology back in the 60s. And, it's just a great example of when you bring women to the table for these issues that people hadn't normally really thought about. She really saw this issue with chemical pollution and was like, why aren't we protecting the environment? Why aren't we protecting our people? She equally cared about the marine environment, the land environment, and people. A lot of her book, Silent Spring, is about cancer and people. And she was just a huge pioneer for the environmental movement. And, when we bring women on and allow them to explore those passions, a lot of change can be made. I mean, she was really the person that pushed for something like the Environmental Protection Agency to be formed. So always got to bring her up. She's a huge inspiration to women everywhere. So yeah, thank you.
Kara, thank you so much for bringing up some of the research on the importance of diversity in kind of solution-based science. Because I've been struck through my career with the research that basically shows you don't want a bunch of people from similar backgrounds and similar institutions sitting in a room trying to decide on the solution. They are, just by their training or their upbringing, kind of biased to a certain perspective. And in fact, when you're talking about an issue like climate change, where we don't even know where all of the solutions are. Sure, we know where there are many, but we still need innovation. You really need people testing out various perspectives and checking each other on potential biases so that we can be open to the greatest solutions. Iulia, let's go to you with your perspectives.
So I was really impressed by Fátima's story. I have heard that it was hard for women in science decades ago, and I'm happy to see how far the field has gone since then, because I also feel really lucky and privileged to be an ocean scientist, and I honestly cannot really imagine not having the opportunities that I have had so far just because I wouldn't be a woman. I did my high school in Romania, where I'm originally from, and then I went to the UK for my undergrad at the University of Edinburgh, and then I came to the US for my PhD. And throughout my time in all these places, I have really benefited from wonderful opportunities. I was on field trips, which introduced me to the world. I did internships. I was at sea. I was on 2 cruises in the Southern Ocean and in Hawaii. And I did a lot of lab work. I went to conferences. I'm here now. This is my 2nd COP. So I really feel very happy that I could benefit from all these educational opportunities. And it's hard to believe that decades ago this was not the case for women and girls. So I'm really hoping that girls are very motivated now to go into these fields and explore the world on their own, and not think that their place is not there just because they're girls. And I also think, back to the story that was mentioned earlier about the coral reef restoration project, I think it's really important once these women are educated in these institutions, they go back to their communities and then they implement the solutions and the alternatives that they've seen everywhere else. And so I think it's really important for women's education to go forward, for them to be an inspiration for the communities they come from. And they're also responsible for, educating the next generations, because, they have children, and so if you have women with a really strong educational background, then it's really a really good investment in the next generation as well. And so this is how you build on, and you create more leadership, and you go forward through that. So I'm very privileged to be part of this.
Thank you, Iulia. I'm going to ask one more question of the panelists before I come to you, so I hope you're thinking. And I'm actually going to come right back to you, Iulia, and work our way this way. Because this question is, what advice would you give to women considering or starting careers in science that you wish had been given to you? And I want to start with you two because you're in your early career. And I also just want to acknowledge that even though I and Fátima are of a certain age, at least from my perspective, we're really learning from younger women. And the way that you work in the workplace, we had to put up with a lot of adversity, but you bring a lot of collaboration and a lot of kind of empowerment that actually helps those of us who are in a different generation to benefit as well. So, Iulia, let's start with you.
Yeah, so I would say I have had a really positive experience in all the places I've been to so far, because there were always really a lot of women around me doing cool science and cool things that I could learn from. But I guess my advice is more general in that I wouldn't have expected to need so much patience to go through a PhD program. So I don't be patient if you're doing a PhD program. So I'm also really interested in maybe going into policy further on. So I think this is a very important lesson that I've learned during my PhD and my studies before my PhD. Patience is crucial. And I guess more specifically to women, just give yourselves the chance to explore everything that you can. If you see something and you're like, oh, I think this sounds really cool, then just go for it and figure out for yourself whether that's suitable for you or not. Don't let others tell you that. So for instance, going at sea, you know, it's hard, yeah, but maybe you like it. Maybe it's what you were born to do. So why not give it a chance and see how it goes?
Thank you. And I'd like to welcome to the stage Karina Vanchuk. I mean, I know you were stuck in that long line. Yeah, I was sweating when I came up here, and I'm probably still dripping a little bit. But welcome. I'll come back to you with a question. Kara, let's go to you for the answer to the second question.
Great. So my first piece of advice, and it was given to me. I've had a lot of great mentors that have given me excellent advice, but it would really be to just advocate and advocate. You know, it's a long road for women in science. You know, as we're saying, it's still a journey that we're on, especially for early career researchers who are planning on trying to start a family. You know, these are two things that are happening at the same time. So, you know, it's important for us to learn very early on to advocate. And I think it's something that most people sort of learn on their own, but I think as a field we could do much better about teaching us how to advocate, you know, having women-centered programs and groups at schools that are really teaching us how to advocate for ourselves, but also for our, you know, partners that are less able to stand up for themselves. And, you know, although the burden should really never fall on the minority to advocate for themselves, it usually does. So, you know, it's just part of it, and we have to learn how to advocate for ourselves. And, you know, making sure that we're getting a seat at the table, that we're not, you know, demure and you know, not stepping up, and we're really making sure that, you know, we're forcing ourselves into these conversations where we're, you know, telling ourselves that we're allowed to be at the table and that we're allowed to have these spots. And that sort of follows into, you know, my second very related piece of advice, which is, you know, you do have to learn how to advocate, but if you're going to advocate for an entire career, you got to take it slow. So, you know, something that I feel like I should have been told earlier was don't go crazy in your first decade in your career. Don't burn yourself out. You know, don't work way too hard because you're trying to people please. Like every other woman I've ever met are huge people pleasers in this field, and we take on so much because, you know, we're nervous about not being able to get a seat at the table. So, you know, I found so many women who are doing so much amazing work at the beginning of their careers, but then it gets really exhausting because we've done a little too much. And, you know, if you're going to continue to advocate and really fight for a seat at the table, you have to keep that energy flowing. So just try not to get burnt out too quickly. And, you know, make sure that you're setting yourself for a very long, productive career of advocating and doing excellent science. So that's my advice.
Lovely perspectives. Tali.
Yeah, so I have kind of a follow-up to that, which is I think advocating is incredibly important, but what I've realized kind of now in my later career and now for the first time leading an organization is that the patriarchy is really deep inside of me and inside of every woman. And sometimes this is the advice that I would give to you PhD students, is that I think in the early part of my career, I had the same kind of like, oh, I have all these opportunities, there's no barriers. And some of the barriers that I've found that I have recently are inside of me. And it took me 9 months to realize that I wanted to lead an organization that I created along with colleagues. It took me a really long time to realize that, and I was waiting to be offered, you know, I was waiting for a man, basically, to give me a chance to do something instead of just raising my hand and saying that I wanted to do it. And I consider myself a pretty brassy, empowered woman, and when I realized that, I mean, I'm still kind of processing that realization that of how deep our society and the patriarchy that we live in is really inside of us, and that's like a lifetime of work, I think. So just don't underestimate quite how deep it may go. The other two pieces of advice I would give the earlier version of me is that you have to be vulnerable to grow. So you have to really be willing to say what you don't know, and that's the way you grow. Pretending like you know stuff when you don't know stuff is really not helpful to you. And I feel like in a male-dominated society, that's actually quite hard to do. So being vulnerable in order to grow, and similarly, processing your emotions in order to find solutions. So you could be in a room full of people and be frustrated or feel like you're not being called on or something. And just like acknowledging those feelings is a way to get to the solution. Those are kind of like probably more personal and psychological, but I wish that I knew those things earlier.
Yeah. I mean, I'll just share. I love your first point, Tali, because I do think that as women, we often second guess our ability to step up and lead. And you know, for me, in my career, I've been the second in charge of research at NOAA. I was a vice chair of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. And for years, I was kicking myself for not having a PhD. And yet, you know, I've been able to achieve all of this. And it really took, you know, over a decade to just say to myself, enough. Clearly, I have some capacity. Like, let's acknowledge that and move on. But it is something I think we all as humans do that. But I think as women, we in particular have a challenge. Believing we can step up to the challenge ahead of us. Fátima.
That's good. I think I would, I love all your interventions. It's really fantastic. And I felt all of that as well. But I would maybe leave an advice for the ones that live in countries that are still, where they still need to fight to be, to reach the level of equality. And I would say believe yourself and be proactive. Really. Sometimes proactivity generates challenges around you. May not be very nice to start with, but if you keep on going, you may be able to get there. So really be proactive. That would be my final.
Thank you. I would like you to pass that microphone down to Karina, who I hope we've given enough time to catch your breath. And Karina, actually, my question to you would just be to share. You've heard some of the perspectives here on the panel. I know you have a celebrated career as an oceanographer. Can you just share some of your perspectives about how it's been for you as a woman working in the field, and any advice that you would share with younger folks coming up in the field?
Oh, thank you very much. Yes, of course. So there are many, many things which have been said here, and which are really also parts I would have added as well. So thank you for this really inspiring discussion today here. Something to add on this is a keyword of persistence. So to believe really in your vision and go ahead with this vision. And sometimes it takes a bit of more time. You got pushed back, but keep on going and keep that vision in order to prove this persistence and raise up your voice. And I think in terms of advice or some ideas, it would be now we have a lot of things achieved, which is really amazing, particularly for supporting early careers and supporting more diversity. The sensibility has much more increased. There are much more inclusionary processes. But there is one step is in terms of the mid-career level, which this needs to proceed. So it's really an aspect which is a bit backward, honestly, in this part. So it would be good to have more chances for proof. So there are good examples of colleagues who step up and start to refuse to be on panels because they're only male, and with the subject of saying a woman can do the same, so we need to mix up here, otherwise I will not contribute, or I give my place to women. So this at least, particularly, I mean, for the youngers, it's much more improvement, but for the mid-career, to have these opportunities of proof, that would be one thing. It's not an advice, it is a suggestion to further foster this type of sensibility. And also for the younger part, for the early careers part, I think something which had been said, so I fully agree and share the feelings and experience in this pathway. One part is in terms of also proposing diversity training and also sensibilization training for the advisory part, which I think would be very helpful in order to increase awareness that there is something to improve, that there are opportunities to create, and also a type of framework or training in order to support career developments at a PhD level and postdoc level for the advisory part. And yes, so that's my major comment on the advisors, and to addition what has been said. So thank you very much.
Very helpful addition and very insightful. I want to open up questions to the audience, if there are any. We have one here in the front row. Please introduce yourself too.
Hello, my name is Melle Levant, and I'm actually holding 5 Guinness World Records while swimming mermaid. And my last record was 50 kilometers, and I picked up 15 kilograms, 35 pounds of trash while doing that. And my passion has become because I moved from Estonia to Miami, and I saw a situation where the fish kill happened because of fertilizers. And I was 29, and I had to put the ventilator tubes inside the ocean. And my question to you, powerful ladies, is how we can make humans understand that is already here. We might be walking around with oxygen tanks ourselves. How we can inspire people to really get the message, because I saw that coming from Europe to Florida, and as a mermaid, I was shocked. And that changed my life a lot. And that's why I'm keep bringing awareness through Guinness World Records. But I would like to know your guys' opinion.
Well, thank you for that question, and congratulations on your records. I wish we could see you in action here.
Because it's a good time to invite everybody. So tomorrow I'm swimming 7:30 on Black Beach, 317 meters, because we are 317 weeks away from 2030.
Oh my goodness, very clever. Well, okay, so who would like to tackle the question? You know, how is it that we can kind of draw attention to the challenges that we're already seeing in the ocean? It's kind of it's always been somewhat revelatory to me that even those, you know, that people just don't necessarily understand the ocean challenges. So, Tali, you start.
So I appreciate the question, and I appreciate a fellow swimmer being here, because that's how actually I got into this field too, is by spending a lot of times in pools and swimming in the ocean as well. So one thing that I think is really important is storytelling. So my organization started out really trying to bring the latest and greatest coral reef science to practitioners who are trying to restore coral reefs in their home areas. And actually a couple of days ago at the Commonwealth Pavilion, I'm pointing to Heidi here from the Commonwealth Pavilion, they helped me launch a storytelling platform on our website, because what we're realizing is that this work is happening underwater, oftentimes by small community groups, sometimes women-led, and these stories really need to get out there so people understand what's going on. I mean, as I'm sure everyone in this room knows, the coral reef ecosystems are really on the brink of extinction. They might be the first ecosystem to actually collapse. And there is, you know, it is restoration, like fixing corals, like putting more corals out there is not the silver bullet for a long-term solution, but it is something that we need in order to just keep these organisms out there. And so anyways, the power of actually telling stories, I think, is really, really important, and can be really powerful. And I'm screening them tomorrow here at 11 in case anyone wants to see them, and they're up on our website. So storytelling to me is one of the, coming all the way like from science to the most like basic human way of communicating, is something that I'm really trying to emphasize.
Would anyone else like to tackle that? Karina?
Thank you very much. So that would have been also my first answer in terms of the narrative. But I would like to add something on those narratives, is that if we want to reach out to a wide perspective and a perception, we need also to tackle this together, to go through a co-constructed approach, taking all the actors we want to talk to, and we want to reach out to take them into the dialogue in order to create those narratives together. So that will be the most powerful tool in order to, with a participatory approach, to reach out with those narratives.
Can I add something? I would say education is also really crucial. I'm really sad that, for instance, in high school I didn't have a class on the environment or the climate. Just introduce people to it really early on. Introduce kids to it. I still think doing a field trip to a local recycling facility or seeing like a landfill site as a child, I think that could have a huge impact on a young person. And I would still love to go to a landfill site and see how it looks. Because, you know, you throw something in the trash, but actually that's going to end up in the ocean or somewhere else, and you don't think about it, but it's still there. And I also think science journalism, science communication is also a really important avenue. I've been thinking about it in the context of writing up my thesis and writing up papers. These science papers, I wish we as scientists did a little bit of a better job at communicating that information in a more accessible way, making it more attractive almost to people who, you know, don't necessarily, I don't know, work with those specific instruments or have that specific vocabulary, but would still be interested in the conclusions. Or I think it would add a lot to just people being more aware of what's happening. And I love mermaids.
Well, if I can, I would just say, in my institution, in our group, what we have been doing for the little ones is we have a collaboration with schools in general, and the kids come once every month, different classes, different schools come and have the time to be in the lab themselves. They wash samples, they look at sediments, they look on whatever, and they really enjoy it, and that's one thing. The other thing that we have not done yet, but I think would be very, very good, would be to invite the policymakers, invite all the community to join us in discussing new projects, new ideas, new research. What can we do? What are your problems? How can we help you? I think we need to get that easy relationship and understanding between the various groups to really be able to do it. I remember being in panels where we have social scientists and we couldn't understand each other because we have totally different ways of seeing things. So yeah, that would be my advice also.
Thank you. That was a great question. Thank you. We have another couple questions. There's one way in the back there. That's you. And then we'll come to the woman. Yes, if you would. And then we'll come there and we'll come to you. Please introduce yourself.
I'm Lisa Levin from Scripps Institution of Oceanography. And I wanted to ask, I feel like to address ocean challenges, we need to empower women scientists in every country on the planet. And I know my oceanographer colleagues in the global south face very, very different kinds of challenges than the ones you've been talking about. They have big pay disparities if they can get a job at all. They have male dominance in the workplace and often abuse at sea. They face just this incredible set of problems. And I feel like we need their voices And we also need men to be on stage talking about this along with the women. So I guess my question is, what do you feel, as representatives of the global north, that we can do to help solve this problem more globally?
Great question. Thank you, Lisa. Who wants to jump in on that one first? Kara, and then I'll come to you.
Sure. Jump in early. Thanks for that question, Lisa. I think that this is a really important question, and I think, especially me coming from the U.S., I come from a huge place of privilege, and, I don't have as many challenges, diving into the world of women in science. And, I think it's really tricky to know what to do from this position because, if your work doesn't work with people from the global south, how do you get involved? How do you help? But I think the best thing that I can do coming from a place of privilege is just to really lift up anyone that I meet from the area, try to connect and work with and collaborate these groups. Bring them to the table. If you have a seat at the table, invite them to the table. If they don't know how to get to the table, really try to figure out how to include a lot of other people and a lot of other groups. And, that's kind of how you can use your privilege to bring in these communities. And it's just really about trying to do all you can to share that spotlight, I think. But it's a really great and quite a difficult question. So I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yes, it was. Thank you very much. It was going in the same direction. I think strengthening the network. So networking. I don't know if it had been said at the beginning when I was too late. Again, my apologize. A strong network is another very important recommendation in order to continue and to proceed and to get advice in situations where there may be questions open. And particular for your question is to increase that network and actively, as you were saying, try to engage with all the communities to increase the diversity and in order to push for strengths and support, and also to have these dialogues, regular dialogues, in order to support the pathway and open opportunities, opportunities to prove themselves and to continue on the pathway.
While I have the mic, I'll just say one short sentence. Invite them to be keynote speakers.
And also in terms of education, try to find ways of allowing younger women to come and study in areas or in countries where the situation is different. They will learn from their experience and they may be able to bring it back. And also, again, in terms of education, I learned during the pandemic that organizing courses online was very, very important for all the communities that do not have a chance to come to meetings which are normally expensive and difficult to reach for a lot of them. And these courses reached a whole enormous number of people. I was surprised to have 500 and something attendees for a biogeochemistry course that was taught by colleagues from all over the world, but all the students from Vietnam to all the countries that I didn't really count on were present, and it was really, really good. So I think that might be one way to expand that notion as well. We can do those type of workshops or in any type of theme, and that might help.
Thank you. I'm just going to add quickly, because we have two more questions that I want to get to. As a vice chair of the IPCC, I was leading the gender action work. And it was really clear, and Karina, I'm looking at you because you mentioned training. Sometimes the men who have been involved in the process for a very long time don't even recognize their privilege or the ways in which women are not being supported to speak up. I mean, in that setting, we have people coming from really diverse backgrounds, many who don't speak English as their first language. And so training is a key way that we are looking to engage folks how do you convene a group of authors so that you're inclusive, so that you're watching out for those people who may have something to say but are not necessarily feeling comfortable in a room full of world-renowned scientists to raise their voice. So I just wanted to add that, but I want to go to you now for your question.
Hi, thanks. Tammy Russell from Scripps Oceanography. My question kind of goes back to a point Karina made earlier, where in regions where there's lots of opportunities now for early career researchers, there's now kind of this bottleneck in the transition during that middle career. And for those of you that have kind of made it to the other side, to these big leadership roles, are there things looking back that these changes or opportunities or things that you see that would have helped make that transition easier?
Who wants to tackle this? Tally.
I don't know if this is an answer to your question, but I do believe very strongly in doing what is right for you. So I also got pregnant during my PhD, and I always wanted a family and didn't really mesh that well with going diving and, traveling around the world. And I found a way to make it work. And I also faced an unbelievable response when I told my advisor that I was pregnant, that I won't even say here because it was just don't want to ruin the vibe. So my point is that, women are smart and creative, and you kind of have to just do what's right for you at the time, and it will work out. Don't let anybody tell you that you can't have a family and you can't, the timing of things is pretty strange. You're kind of like ramping up your career, and you're also like in kind of the prime of your life fertility-wise. And you just have to kind of do what's right for you and just believe that it will work. That's my kind of hopeful advice. Anyone else?
I love that. Yeah, I mean, I'm going to add this. Just because the men who did the job before you did it in a certain way, you don't have to do that job in the same way. Like, it's really important for us, especially in the middle of our career, to recognize that we can set a different pathway for what success looks like. I love the way you described that, Tally. But, it's, again, this comes back to us limiting ourselves. I will say that some of the most outstanding female employees who I've worked with, who had, obviously a clear path to leadership, who were at a time in their life where they're like, sorry, I'm going to go to my kid's soccer game, so I'm not taking on this leadership role. They didn't end their careers with those decisions. They, in fact, in some cases, generated great respect for our understanding of what their priorities were, how they were willing to set boundaries, and it actually, in some ways really enhanced their career moving forward because people were like, there's somebody who knows what she needs. So just want to say that. And now I want to go to you, Annie, for a question.
Hello, everyone. I'm Olivia Livingstone. I'm from Liberia. I work with the Environmental Justice Foundation. So I've just been really emotional today because I feel like I'm constantly looking for inspiration. I don't see representation. And I come from a country where it took years for my career to be recognized because of promotion at work or travels before even my parents could see that, okay, maybe what she's doing is making sense. And couldn't really follow my path because it wasn't even being offered at university in Liberia. So I just had to do general and environmental science. Glad I still found my way back to the fisheries. And even at CUPS, I'm part of the 100 young people being sponsored by CUP presidency. But most of the opportunities coming in the group chat are not ocean related. So I feel like there's this constant struggle, just looking for inspiration, just looking for a seat at the table, and it gets really tiring. And you feel like, I don't know, just constantly fighting to be seen, back home, out of country, everywhere. And I would have really loved to see maybe someone with similar challenges just telling me how they got through it. Thank you.
Thank you for being brave and sharing your personal story. I think we all want to give you a gigantic hug right now. And we all want to step up to be a part of your network to support you. Is there anybody who? I mean, we're all kind of got tears now in our eyes as well. Tali.
Yeah, thank you for speaking up. I had saved it for the end, but I wanted to acknowledge the fact that we are all white. We are all from the global north, and honestly, there are sectors of our society that face so many more barriers than we do. And so you beat me to the punch by saying it beforehand, but you said it so much better than I can. And your experience is really what we need up here. The barriers are huge, and in order to get to where we need to go, I mean, the whole reason that we're all here is because of the patriarchy, let's be honest. The reason that we're here at COP, the reason that we're in this situation, this would not have been the case if, women, people of color were leading the way. It just would not. So thank you for being brave.
And I think one of you earlier was talking about how important it has been for us when men will stand up and say, I'm not going to be on this panel if it's all men. And I think we need to make a commitment to you and your colleagues that we won't be on panels where it's just privileged, even if it's just privileged, white women from the North. It is our responsibility to raise us all up and to support that moving forward. I think we're now at time, which is a fitting way for us to end. I really just want to ask you to join me in thanking our panelists for their insights and for being willing to share their time with us today. And thanks again to AGU for sponsoring this wonderful session, and I wish you all a good day at COP.